Thank you very much. Thank you all for coming. I do want to say a special word of welcome to the person without whom this book could not exist. Indeed, without whom I could not exist. My wonderful surgeon, Peter Royce, who's joined us today. I am very grateful to you, Peter. So, the Soul Catcher. I thought perhaps what I should do, in case some of you don't know, is to explain what the title means, why it's called Soul Catcher. That, in fact, was the name of the battle standard, the battle banner of Prince Monconegoro. These princes in Java, as in many other parts of the world, when they marched to war, they had their own well-known battle banner. People could recognize where the prince was and who it was who was coming and so on. And his was called the Soul Catcher. It's the Javanese is Sambara Nyowo. You might call it Soul Snatcher or something like that, but I thought that Soul Catcher was a bit more euphonious. He describes it in his autobiographical chronicle. We know it was that very dark blue color the Javanese call wulung, and it had a white moon on it. He doesn't say this, but I presume it must have been the Islamic crescent moon. And when that battle banner was raised, people knew that this extraordinary warrior was coming, and it was a very good time to start going somewhere. After his death, when these princes and monarchs die in Java, they receive a posthumous appellation as their own name. And Prince Monconegoro, he's Monconegoro the First. Of course, that name went on, and there was a Monconegoro the Second, the Third, and so on. We're now down to, I've lost track. Is it the 12th, I think, the present one? Something like that. Anyway, when choosing his posthumous appellation, I don't know how that was done. I don't know who in the palaces would choose what the name would be, but the name they chose for him, not surprisingly, was the Soul Catcher, Sambara Nyowo. So this battle banner, so much associated with this man, became his name after death. And if you go to Java today and say that you're writing a book about Monconegoro the First, everyone will say, oh, Sambara Nyowo, that's the name. He's a very legendary figure. Now, this is my final book. I really mean it. I mean, bluntly, even if I didn't have cancer, it would be my final book. At my age, I wouldn't start a project on this scale. And it took me 50 years to write it. Now, Dave is laughing, your first thought is, this is the book he spent his whole career avoiding. This is the one he just didn't want to write. But in fact, it's quite the contrary. This is the book I always wanted to write. I met Monconegoro 50 years ago when I was doing my doctoral thesis. I thought, this is a man who deserves a biography. I found the documentation was extraordinary in terms of volume. There always seemed to be other projects which somehow were more pressing, other books which needed to be written, institutions which needed a professor sitting at the head of them, things like that. But I just kept ticking away at this book for 50 years. At one stage, well, several stages, I spent a lot of time traveling overseas, and when I was sitting alone in a hotel room at night, I would always have with me photocopies, usually of Babat Gyalti, of one of the main primary sources, and I would sit there in the evening just reading another part of the documentation, making notes, and building up the file, which 50 years later has come to be this book. When I retired from